with health, the first is to review the status of implementation of the outcomes of the first and the second men's conferences. The second is to table recommendations of the multi-stakeholder consultations which have been happening for the content of a draft AU and Violence Against Women and Girls Convention, the EVAWG Convention. The third is to consider the key messages for the common Africa position on what is positive masculinity. And we will also be dealing with share evidence-based African interventions to prevent violence against women and children, and programming strategies that will strengthen the interlinkages that address women and girls' economic and social vulnerability. And finally, the fifth outcome for us that's ahead today and tomorrow is to end off having adopted the outcome document of the third men's conference. Now, this conference is being conducted using a hybrid modality, and it's also conducted in the two African Union official languages, namely English and Francais, and will be broadcast on the AUC media platforms and local television. This third African Union Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity is being jointly held under the leadership of His Excellency Azali Assoumani, the 2023 African Union Chairperson and President of the Union of the Comoros, together with His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa. It has also been convened in collaboration with His Excellency Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, who's the AU champion on positive masculinity. Also with His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana, who's also the AU champion on gender and development issues on our continent. Also His Excellency Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, and His Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the patron of the African Women Leaders Network, AWOLD, as well as His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Participants include, of course, AU heads of state and government, male politicians and senior government leaders, men in leadership in business and the private sector as a whole, male traditional and religious leaders, male leaders of the academia and intelligentsia, male leaders in the entertainment industry and sports, leading male journalists, leaders of men's organizations and movements, male youth leaders, civil society leaders, United Nations agencies, development partners, philanthropists, parliamentarians, women's rights organization leaders, including young women, trade union leadership and labor leadership, and as well as organs, the different organs of the AU and media. Now, distinguished guests, it's time now to commence the opening ceremony of the third AU Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity in Leadership to End Violence Against Women and Girls. We're going to begin with welcoming remarks that will be delivered by the Minister for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities of the Republic of South Africa, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the Minister of Health, Solidarity, Social Protection and Gender Promotion of the Union of Comoros, Madame Lub Yakut Zaido, and the Special Envoy of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security, Madame Binta Diop. Let's please welcome them to the stage with a round of applause as we open this third conference. Dr. Dlamini-Zuma, Madame Zaido and Madame Diop. The first address will be delivered by Minister Dlamini Zuma, and then she'll be followed by Madame Zaido, and lastly, Madame Diop. The French translation is being done on channel 2 of your devices, those who've got your devices on the tables, so you are able to follow. Apologies, I should have mentioned that before. Channel 4, channel 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moderator, our panel, excuse me, because we started late, I will not be able to greet everyone. So I'll just take you and then because of time. But Dan has done a good job. Let me first greet our former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but also African Women Leaders Network, patron. Our own former deputy president, Lambonguga Togotela. She is also part of the Women Leaders Network. Our sister from the Comores, the Minister of Health, the Special Envoy who's on stage with us on Women, Peace and Security, all the ministers, deputy ministers, religious leaders, traditional leaders who are here, international organizations that are here, the Youth Special Envoy, but most importantly, the delegates who make the conference. You are very welcome. Well, we are very honored that we are at this conference, and I have the pleasure and honor to welcome you to this southern tip of our beautiful continent. And of course, at the third Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity in Leadership to End Violence Against Women and Girls. And of course, it's co-hosted by the AU President himself, His Excellency Mr. Azali Suman, President of the Union of Comores, and our own President, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic. And gathered here are leaders, but especially male leaders, from all walks of life, and most of them have made inputs into this conference before. In the run-up of the conference, there's been lots of consultations, which include, but not exclusively to, traditional leaders, religious leaders, political, civil society. And here we have leaders from academia, from judiciary, business, from the working class, artists, women, youth, you name it, we're all here. Why? Because we don't want to leave anyone behind in terms of this fight, because this fight needs everybody. And we want to take a whole of society approach so that every member of society is involved to end violence against women and girls. But I thought, in welcoming you, I must just trace, how did we get here? How did we get to a position where women and girls are violated, are killed, but also women themselves are not free. Women don't participate equally in all areas of human endeavor. How did we get here? And when I was trying to trace how we got here, I saw a quote from one of the finest sons of this continent, Thomas Sankara. And this is what he had to say, and I quote him. He said, Frederick not only traced the evolution of technology, but also the history of the enslavement of women, which was born with the arrival of private property, owing to the transition from one mode of production to another, and from one form of social organization to another. Humankind first saw or first knew slavery with the advent of private property. Man, master of his slaves and of the land, also became the owner of the women. This was the great historic defeat of the female sex. It came about with an upheaval in the division of labor, a result of new modes of production and a revolution in the means of production. In this way, paternal right replaced maternal rights. Property was now handed down from father to son rather than before from woman to her clan. The patriarchal family made its appearance, founded on the sole and personal property of the father who had become the head of the family. With this family, the woman was oppressed, close quote. So we don't want this family. We want to get out of this family that oppresses women. And we've seen violence across not only our continent, but across the globe. And it knows no borders, no age, no class. But let me say it is encouraging that men in general and leaders in particular are taking on this fight to free women and girls from violence and ensuring that their rights are fully respected as human rights. The AU has developed and adopted strategies and legal instruments focusing on equality and empowering women in all facets of life. These efforts include the formulation and implementation of policies and programs addressing women and girls' rights, advocating for their protection, and combating harmful practices and societal norms. The AU's proactive stance extends now to acknowledging the role of men in perpetuating violence, leading to the establishment in 2020 of the African Union High-Level Presidential Response to End Violence Against Women and Girls. This initiative seeks to mobilize political commitment and action at the highest levels of AU leadership, aiming to prevent and eradicate violence against women and girls in Africa. The conference also stands as testament to the commitment of both leaders and men, but led at some stage by women, but now we're wanting to give the leadership of this fight to the men. And women will be collaborators. And we want to thank the collaboration of the African Women Leaders Network and the Circle of Champions on Positive Masculinity, comprising of eminent leaders. And we aim to consolidate efforts across sectors and regions to eradicate violence against women and girls in Africa. So our gathering today is not merely symbolic, but a proactive effort to assess the progress made by male leaders in addressing this critical issue, by understanding the structural drivers of violence against women and girls and emphasizing the importance of laws, policies, economic inclusion, and evidence-based interventions. We strive to forge a path towards a safer and more equitable Africa. Of course, we want an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. That's the Africa we want, which will be driven by its citizens, and the majority of these citizens are women and young people. May we have a robust and fruitful engagement towards ending violence against women and children, and of course, towards positive masculinity. I thank you, merci beaucoup, asante sana.
Thank you, Minister. Just to apologize to our French colleagues who are here and the delegates and the guests, we seem to have a problem with the channel, which is channel 4 for interpreting. And my French is not great. Je ne parle pas français. I speak English, but je falo muito português também, and ngikhuluma nesiZulu nesishanga nesotho. So French is not my strength. So you will pardon me. They are trying to sort it out. We're really trying to get it sorted out. So apologies to our colleagues from French-speaking Africa. Now I'm going to ask Madame Lubia Zaido to come up and address us. And she'll be, of course, addressing us in French. She is the Minister of Health, Solidarity, Social Protection and Gender Promotion, the Union of Comoros. Madame.
Bonjour tout le monde. C'est dommage que je n'ai pas pu suivre le discours de ma sœur, la ministre Madame Zouma. C'était très important pour moi et pour nous tous. Excellences, Madame la ministre de la Femme, de la Jeunesse et des Personnes handicapées de la République d'Afrique du Sud. Excellences, Madame Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, ancienne présidente du Libéria et marraine d'Aoline. Docteur Finzile Mlambo Nakuka, ancienne vice-présidente de l'Afrique du Sud, chers collègues ministres, Madame Binta Diop, envoyée spéciale du président de la Commission de l'Union africaine sur les femmes, paix et sécurité, distingués invités, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. L'honneur pour moi est immense de m'exprimer devant vous à l'occasion de cette 3e conférence des hommes sur la masculinité positive, organisée conjointement par mon pays, l'Union des Comores, et la République d'Afrique du Sud, pays amis et frères dont les relations fraternelles et amicales durent depuis toujours. Vous me permettrez, avant d'aller plus loin, de rendre un vibrant hommage aux autorités sud-africaines d'avoir accepté d'abriter et co-présider cette importante conférence. Je saisis également cette occasion pour remercier et saluer l'engagement du réseau des femmes leaders africains d'avoir initié et porté cette dynamique africaine qui tend à éradiquer toute forme de violence faite aux femmes et aux filles. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes heureux de nous retrouver à Pretoria à l'occasion de la 3e conférence des hommes sur la masculinité positive. En effet, la lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles reste une préoccupation majeure de nos États et notre institution continentale, l'Union africaine, dont son Excellence, M. Azali Assoumani, président de l'Union des Comores, assure actuellement la présidence. Oui, les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles demeurent un fléau qu'il faut vite éradiquer. Les indicateurs confirment l'urgence d'agir. Dans le monde, une femme sur 3 est victime de violences. En 2021, 45 000 femmes et filles ont été victimes de féminicides tuées par leurs partenaires. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, distingués invités, pour nous toutes et tous réunis ici et pour la femme ministre de la Santé en charge du genre que je suis, ces chiffres sont inacceptables, intolérables et injustes. Plus de la moitié de l'humanité ne peut être continuellement victime de violences. Trop, c'est trop. Il est temps de dire haut et fort, stop. Nous nous devons de renforcer la politique tolérance zéro en toutes circonstances. C'est d'ailleurs l'une des recommandations phares de la 3e consultation des femmes leaders africaines que l'Union des Comores a abritée le 30 et 31 octobre dernier. En effet, durant ces 2 jours, les femmes leaders africaines ont exploré des pistes innovantes pour prévenir et mettre fin à la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles et leur autonomisation économique et financière. Mesdames et Messieurs, honorables assistances, souvent on invoque l'héritage culturel et religieux pour justifier certains comportements attentatoires à la dignité de la femme. La réalité est tout autre. D'ailleurs, le système ancestral qui organise la société comorienne en est la preuve. Il s'agit d'un système conçu pour protéger les femmes et les filles contre les violences basées sur le genre et contribuer à l'autonomisation des femmes. Les privilèges matériels accordés à la femme dans le cadre du matriarcat des Comores dénotent les prédispositions de la société comorienne, donc des hommes aussi, à protéger la femme comme élément fondamental reconnu de la cohésion sociale. Mesdames et Messieurs, honorables assistances, je voudrais, avant de clore mon allocution, vous demander de rendre un vibrant hommage à nos chefs d'État, grands pionniers de ces conférences. À commencer par le président de la République démocratique du Congo, Saint Félix-Antoine Tshisekedi Chilombo. C'est grâce à son leadership que la première conférence de l'Union africaine sur la masculinité positive s'est tenue à Kinshasa en novembre 2021. Sam Macky Sall, président de la République du Sénégal, qui a assuré le relais à Dakar le 9 et 10 novembre 2022. Sam Cyril Ramaphosa, président de la République d'Afrique du Sud, et Sam Azali Assoumani, président de l'Union des Comores et président en exercice de l'Union africaine, d'avoir accepté de prendre le flambeau de cette cause et le ramener au plus haut. Nous espérons que d'autres chefs d'État s'engageront pleinement pour perpétuer ce combat qui nous incombe toutes et tous. C'est sous ce sentiment d'espérance que nous allons conduire cette 3e conférence des hommes sur la masculinité positive. Merci de votre aimable attention.
And now it's time for the special envoy of the chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security, Binta Diop, to address us, Madame. And just to note, the technical team is apologizing once more. They are trying to sort out the channel for interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's good to have a male moderator. Thank you so much. Let me recognize Excellency Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Minister for Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, and also Madame Loub Yacoub Zaidou, Madame la Ministre de la Santé, Solidarité,
commission sociale, mais de l'Union des Comores. Ma sœur, merci également d'être avec nous. Let me also recognize Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia, Nobel Peace Laureate, patron of Aulin. Thank you, ma'am. And also Excellency Madam Naledi Pandor, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa, and our dear Pumzile Mlambo-Nguka, the former Vice President of South Africa, former Executive Director of UN Women, and our LINCO convener. And let me just say that, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will observe all protocol. After Kinshasa, Dakar, here we are, once again, in the Jacaranda city of Pretoria, where President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Azali Assoumani, in line with the fraternal and Pan-African spirit, welcome us for the occasion of the third AU Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity. So please allow me, therefore, to salute the outstanding leadership of these two heads of state for their commitment to African women's vision of ending violence toward women. Thank you, Ma Ellen, our mentor, our guiding light, for inspiring our leaders to take this bold action. To my sister, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, we just wanted to thank you, as we know that Africa owes you a lot, especially African women. Agenda 2063, a vision that resonates with the purpose of our gathering today. Thank you also, our sister, Naledi Pandor, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for hosting us in your beautiful Dirko. I was saying the same way on behalf of Musa Faki Mohammed, and as the chair of the presidential group that I was leading this conference, I also wanted to recognize those who have been part of this process, the advisors of President Assoumani. We recognize her, Madam Kultum, but also President Ramaphosa, Madam Olive, but the AU Secretariat and our entire teams, without whom today would not have been today a reality. The same goes to the entire UN system and partner for their constant support. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, today, the third edition of the Men Conference on Positive Masculinity in Leadership to Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, I think is really timely and pivotal. In recent years, we have made significant strides by recognizing the impact of violence against women and girls in Africa, and starting with a critical conversation we did in many fora. This process in particular has produced the Kinshasa Declaration and the Dakar Call, two pillars on which we rely to make sure that our needs, to call out our needs and advance our commitment to this cause through action. However, our team, Accelerating Commitment to open an African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, relate to the urgency of having a fundamental instrument to tackle the proliferation of gender-based violence on our continent. This year, we wish to look back and analyze the progress that has been made so far since the first two editions and adopt a louder stance for encouraging implementation at all levels. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for far too long, the advocacy for women's rights fell under the responsibility of women themselves. That is why it's commendable that the African Union has taken steps to actively involve men in leadership as voices and advocates of this cause. Violence against women and girls affects us in so many ways. It negatively impacts economies, societies, and nations to an extent we are still trying to measure. We cannot claim to be working towards sustainable development when we still have societies where women are not fully respected as valued members. It is everyone's fight to restore the long due status of women as pillars of communities on our continent. Our AU champion for positive masculinity is Excellency Felix Tshisekedi, and the members of the Circle of Champions on Positive Masculinity and their peers is adopting a decision to develop an EVAUG convention has shown us what it truly means to leverage male political leadership by backing and supporting initiative and action at the continental level for women's human rights. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot speak about gender-based violence without hearing the voices of the main actors in society. Leading up to this high-level initiative, we engage in consultation with stakeholders of different sectors to gather recommendations and ensure our policy outcomes are well informed. The engagement with women leaders in Moroni was particularly powerful because of the relevant issue around which it was centered. I commend the efforts of the African Women Leaders Network in ensuring that women's voices are heard and accounted for. So we really express our appreciation to the government of the Comoros and all countries and partners for their steadfast support in facilitating these consultations. The outcome of Moroni engagement was a set of highly important recommendations that range from political, economic, institutional, to social reform. I especially draw your attention to the call to action from the women leaders in Moroni, alleviating feelings of hostility in conflict regions across the world, which disproportionately impact women and girls, and invest in the well-being of humanity. That was the call of women in Moroni. We cannot emphasize enough the relevance of peace, security, and development to the situation of women in Africa. In this juncture, allow me to acknowledge also, my sister here in your hometown, my sister Pumzile Mlamonguka, my co-convener of Aulin, for empowering women from where you were sitting before at UN Women. Thanks to this collaboration, we are here today to implement the Aulin vision. So let's also recognize, I'm sure that tomorrow, our sister, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, who will be with us representing Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed. I'm also very happy to have our special envoy, which is Ms. Chido, who is in charge of our youth, who is also in this room. Chido, thank you for being part of the African Union delegation. To the many women leaders from all sectors, including the Auli national chapters and all the youth caucus. And I also wanted to name the civil society that have been part of this journey, many of whom in our midst today. I want to say that once again, our joint efforts yield what will become a landmark instrument in the history of women's rights in Africa. EYG Convention, an instrument that will shape a future where every woman and girl can live free from the shackles of violence and oppression. You allow me, before I end, to recognize the United Nations, particularly the UN Women, the UNDP, the UNFPA, and all other partners that have been supporting this process from the beginning. And we want to salute your commitment and continued commitment to this cause. So some of you are in this room. We thank you very much on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union, Musa Faki Mohammed. So again, distinguished delegates, I really wanted to make sure that all of us in this journey, at the end of the day, we have a EYG Convention, an instrument like the Maputo Protocol that revolutionized here in Africa to make sure that that instrument will make sure that the life of the ordinary women will be a better life. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Madam. The technical issue is being attended to, and once again, our sincere apologies to our French delegates and participants in the conference. Now, before I ask Dr. Dlamini Zuma and Madame Zaido and Madame Diop to leave the stage, we have a symbolic moment now. As you would all know, violence against women and girls on our continent continues right up to this moment. Hence, we are gathered here to try and come up with solutions that will end this violence that we men perpetrate against our girls and our women. Now, this moment is for remembering all women and girls in Africa who have been killed by those who are supposed to love them, by their intimate partners in many cases, and those who continue to be violated, to be raped. And this is why we have come together in the region today in an effort to strengthen our fight towards ending the battle towards ending violence against women and girls. We've just started a few days ago, the whole world, including here in South Africa and the rest of the continent, the 16 days of activism against violence against women and children. And as we start this, we want to restate our strong commitment towards our common vision of being here together to make a meaningful difference. And for men, particularly those who are in leadership in Africa, and all men who play different roles in society, to be allies towards this vision of the Africa that we all want, an Africa that is peaceful, prosperous for all Africans, safe for all girls and all women. I'm going to ask Minister Dlamini Zuma now and Madame Zaido, please, to come up here to light these two candles in a symbolic moment of remembrance of all the women and girls who've suffered at the hands of us men on our continent, meting out to them untold suffering and violence. I hope it works. Shall we all stand and observe a minute of silence to all the victims and those who have survived violence on our continent, our girls and women. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Madam. You may leave the stage now. Thank you. I was just for a moment there reflecting when I was asked to be the program director for this day one of this men's conference, and just knowing what we know about the level and scope and scale of violence against women and girls on our continent, I didn't feel that I was qualified to be standing here. But just this moment brings home to me as a man that I and other men who are in the room, we need to do far more than we've done up to now in order to make sure that we do end violence against our women and children. It goes deeper than slogans, it goes deeper than marching, it goes deeper than declarations. I believe it goes to us as men on our continent, changing and transforming our mindsets and how we look at our women and our girls. I'm going to ask next Dr. Ibo Mandaza, the Executive Chairman of the Southern Africa Political Economy Series, SAPES Trust. I'm trying to find, I saw him earlier. Please, sir, come to stage. He's going to be addressing us with some opening remarks. But I'm going to ask at the same time for him to be joined by the United Nations Resident Coordinator in South Africa, Mr. Nelson Mufu. Please, sir, come up as well and take a seat here on stage, as well as a young person who's already been mentioned here by the earlier speaker, Chido Mpembe. She's the chairperson's youth envoy of the African Union chairperson. Chido as well, if you may come and take a seat here. And we'll all be listening now to Dr. Ibo Mandaza first, giving us opening remarks, and that will be followed by those two statements by Mr. Mufu and Ms. Mpembe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Nice to see you again. Let me begin by thanking the AU in particular, but also the governments of South Africa and the Comoros, and the government of South Africa for hosting us in these splendid surroundings at DECO. My statement is very brief. First is to acknowledge the enormous work done by the AU since 2002, when the OAU was transformed into the African Union and adopted the gender equality under Article 4L of the Constituent Act. We are meeting here today as a follow-up to DRC, Kinshasa, and Dakar in an amazing gathering and very poignant statements, background documents, which are before us, which explain very clearly the journey so far as the AU is concerned. And therefore, in acknowledging the enormous milestones achieved, one has to also point out that and acknowledge that this achievement has largely been the outcome of enormous work by our women's movement on the continent. Without them, we would not be here. We would not have come this far. The array of women leaders in this room alone, in the front row, is evidence that we have moved on the back of women's movement. There's still a lot to be done, but let's agree and acknowledge that those women leaders who have made it as they have before us have done so on their own merit, on the basis of as equal, if not greater, qualities than men. As I also have to acknowledge that even us in academia, and I do see, now before I move to that, I just want to acknowledge that among the prominent leaders that we have in front of us here, I'm pleased to mention that two of them, of my former students, Ambassador Liberata Mulamula from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, Shikamo, and of course, and Naledi Pando. You need not get up, please. Both of you have gone far ahead of us. You are doing amazing work, Naledi. We are proud of you. Then, here we have, in academia, men, we have also gone through enormous education. Blade. We have been educated in our various fora, in Codestria, which we founded 50 years ago, and we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Codestria. Sapes Trust. We have very viable gender units within those organizations. And through them, we've learned a lot. I don't know if Blade remembers 1998, the Sapes Colloquium on Gender and Democracy. The opening session was chaired by one of our professor friends. I won't mention his name for fear of embarrassing him. But a very eminent scholar from Nigeria was chairing. The discussion was very lively, and tea break approached, and then he said, look, ladies and gentlemen, I want to suggest that we continue the discussion while the women serve us tea. So, of course, there was an uproar. This is a conference organized by our women folk on gender democracy. And of course, remember Patricia McFadden and others were there, and there was a war in the room. And then he said, what now? Have I said anything wrong? So at that stage, I adjourned the meeting, and my professor friend didn't come back after break. So embarrassed he was. So there's some of the educational sessions we've gone through in this journey. Lastly, I just want to say that maybe we need to, as scholars, we need to move beyond activism, gender activism, and combine in scholarship the various disciplines, anthropology included, and of course history. And Minister Zuma's quotation from Thomas Sankara should be an epitaph in this journey, because it explains everything. It explains the origins of patriarchy. And I learned from political economy that Africa was matriarchal. And many parts of the region, Southern Africa, are matriarchal to this day. And I've noticed in my own study of gender that our counterparts from the matriarchal societies, take the Tonga of Zambia, our counterparts, male counterparts, have a much more profound respect for women than the patriarchal societies. Now, just thinking that whether we should try and combine studies of these matriarchal societies in a deeper fashion. There are a number of Zimbabweans in this room here, and they'll be surprised to know, for example, that the word Mwari, which means God, is the original meaning is woman, the creator. Now, the Christians, the Colonials, when they arrived, they found that this term Mwari was too profound to be assigned to a woman, let alone a native woman. So they appropriated the term to mean God. So today, most Zimbabweans believe Mwari is God. But please, at the risk of being sacrilegious, Mwari is woman, the creator. And if we can convey that message to our boy children at an early age, I think we'll move very far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mandaza. Thank you, Prof. Good to see you as well. I wish I knew then what he's just shared here, and I would have become a student as well of him. I would have become his student, and maybe I'll be seated somewhere there with Dr. Naledi Pando today. So because of what you've produced, thank you very much, Prof. Okay, Mr. Nelson Mufu from the United Nations. He's a resident coordinator. He's next.
Thank you, Program Director, and I would like to stand on existing protocol, but I cannot proceed without acknowledging the former President of Liberia, the former Deputy President of South Africa, the African Union representation, including my big sister, Ms. Benita Diop, and certainly also the ministers who are in the room, and the host of this gathering today. Thank you, Madam Zuma, as well as thank you, Minister Pando, for the support. It is quite gratifying to be in a space as a man speaking on behalf of the United Nations system, not only the system based here in South Africa, but beyond. You already heard the contribution that the United Nations system, working in lockstep with the African Union, is trying to bring to this process. And in the room, of course, are several senior colleagues from the UN system, and on their behalf, I thank you for your commitment, and I thank you for being here today. We are associated with this important conference and the process, which provides an opportunity for male leadership to catalyze positive change, and as we just heard, to become activists and champions who help shape a better future. Violence against women and girls is one of the most widespread and persistent human rights violations today, and has a long-term impact on the victims, on the survivors, families, the wider community and society at large. That is why it is really also important to combat this and for men to play their part in challenging this, I would say, shameful practice. As the United Nations Secretary General recently said, gender equality is essentially a question of power. Sorry, gender inequality is essentially a question of power in a male-dominated world and a male-dominated culture. Power relations must therefore be reversed. The work around gender equality, including the focus today on promoting positive masculinity to end violence against women and girls, is therefore more critical now than ever. A bracing reflection just before I came up, it struck me looking through a recent UN Women report, which indicates that in the last 12 months, 1 in 5 women and girls worldwide have experienced physical and or sexual violence perpetrated by men as intimate partners, or I would say predators. It therefore goes without saying that at least 1 in 5 men worldwide, and hopefully not in this room, are culprits abusing women and girls. That's why we need to, as called for by the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, and also reflected in the African Union's Agenda 2063, we need to ensure that women's empowerment and gender equality is advanced, because this is central and a critical driver to achieving all of our other goals, especially the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we're halfway through, with less than 7 years to go to reach the 2030 deadline. So this is really an important inflection point, as well as a moment for a paradigm shift. Business as usual is no longer tenable. We need to identify and put into action ways to attain and exceed our goals, leaving no one behind, especially women and girls. That is why the UN in South Africa is working very closely with the government and partners, including traditional leaders who I also see in the room, the private sector, and women's groups, and not to forget boys as well, and men. We recently, with the Minister, Dlamini Zuma, launched a sub-regional GBV program that includes Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, Zambia, and of course, South Africa. And the goal is to accompany the efforts already being led by government and women's groups in trying to combat violence against women and girls. All the men in the room are therefore urged, and actually beyond the men in the room, to reinforce their commitment and advance collective and individual actions to combat violence against women and girls. I would like to take this opportunity to also express my steadfast and unreserved commitment to championing positive masculinity, a cause that is not just a responsibility, but a moral obligation. Through championing positive masculinity, we collectively promote healthy and constructive behaviors, attitudes, and values associated with being a man, instilling and reinforcing qualities such as responsibility, respect, courage, and leadership, especially in young boys as they transition into positive manhood. We must encourage fathers to assume their parental responsibilities and support children, even those out of wedlock. This is particularly important because countless women and girls in conflict and humanitarian contexts are victims of sexual exploitation and abuse by African Union and United Nations personnel deployed to protect them in peacekeeping and other settings. They often leave behind children in these countries when they return home. This conference is therefore another chance to consolidate our will and to address the structural drivers of violence at legislative, policy, economic, and social norm levels. The whole of society approach has already been mentioned, and this is really important. Again, to all the men in the room, my brothers and friends, let us engage as gender advocates and speak out as active agents and stakeholders who can transform social norms, behaviors, and gender stereotypes that perpetuate discrimination and inequality. In closing, let me echo again some words from the United Nations Secretary General, who says, "We must stand with women activists. Together, let us stand up and speak out. Let us build a world that refuses to tolerate violence against women anywhere, in any form, once and for all. Enough is enough." I thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir. I've been informed that the interpreting channels are on now. For French is 4 and for English is 1. Just keep on trying them and testing them. Up here in front, there could be a network problem. but my colleagues at the back, they tell me that there is sound. So if you are able to pick up your devices for interpreting, channel 4 is French and channel 1 would be English. Let's hope as we go along, the network problem will be sorted. Thank you very much. Ms. Chido Mpembe, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Program Director. If you may allow me just to acknowledge Her Excellency, the former President of Liberia, Madame Ellen Sirleaf, our lean patron, Her Excellency, Minister Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Her Excellency, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Minister for Women, Youth and Persons of Disabilities, Her Excellency, Madame Zaido, the Minister of Health, Solidarity, Social Protection and Gender Promotion of the Union on Comoros, Madame Benita Diop, the Special Envoy to the African Union on Women, Peace and Security, with all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to extend my sincere gratitude to the government of the people of South Africa, led by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, for your hospitality. Allow me to also extend my sincere gratitude in absentia, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, who made sure that within his cabinet, indeed young people's voices are represented, and giving me this honor to make sure that the message comes across for young people. As we've all convened today, for the 3rd African Union Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity in Leadership to End Violence Against Women and Girls. But I remind you that the largest demographic that we have in Africa are the young people. So it's very important that they're represented in this meeting. It's very important that the decisions are made are crucial because these issues are affecting them the most. This could not be more timely, and neither can we call it a ticking bomb at this moment. It's already a bomb. Young women and girls' rights have been continuously violated for a very long time. And this issue has been passed on from generation to generation to generation. And we cannot afford to pass it on to the future generation too. We cannot afford that they deal with the consequences if we do not attend to it now, and more so seriously. What is even more alarming is research by the Commission for Gender Equality found that while cases of gender-based violence are increasing, there is also a concerning rate of criminal cases being withdrawn. The findings also show that the alarming withdrawal of cases by victims are due to high levels of poverty, distance from police stations and courts, as some of the hindering factors for victims' ability to access justice. This means we need our duty bearers to do more and to provide access for the underprivileged, access for the marginalized communities who could not even be with us in this room today. And perhaps some may not even be accounted for, but they have to be remembered. While the issue above is an issue of responding, one case has become too many. It is worrisome that recent figures report that in one country alone, a shocking, staggering number of 10,808 women were raped in just one quarter of 2022. A total of 87,000 women were killed intentionally. And out of these, 19,000 came from Africa, meaning that 137 women are killed every single day. That's someone's daughter, that's someone's sister, that's someone's mother. It's worrisome. And as we speak right now, a young woman's destiny is being cut short due to this inhuman act. While gender-based violence affects women and girls and children of all ages, in East and Southern Africa, adolescents and young women are particularly at risk. The risk of experiencing gender-based violence remains high, between 46% and 78% among adolescent girls. In addition, youth in conflict contexts are particularly vulnerable to gendered violence. The case of rising violence globally and in some countries in our continent remain a concern on our peace and security, because these are all issues that are leading to the increase on gender-based violence. Gender-based violence has not only just become a women's only issue, nor a man's only issue, it's a human issue, a societal issue, a continental issue, which breaks down to a national issue. Ladies and gentlemen, since my appointment as the African Union Chairperson's Youth Envoy, I've also been embarking on listening tours across the continent. And the idea of these listening tours is so that we can listen intentionally to what young people have to say. I came to South Africa last week to make sure that even before this meeting, I gather with my constituency. And over 150 young people, 80% being young men, gathered. And we spoke in a room so that I could listen on how we can begin to coexist. A lot of issues came up. Issues to do with trauma, issues to do with vulnerability, issues to do with breaking traditional barriers, issues to do even with mental health, issues to do with suicide. As you're aware that the highest rate of suicide we currently have on the continent are actually men. And hurt men are going to hurt women. So we also need to address the root cause. What are we going to do about the mental health of the young men out there who cannot open up with these issues and are turning to anger and violence that are affecting us as young women? How can we ensure that they also have information and are aware of what we are discussing in these rooms, how they're embedded in the African Agenda 2063 and the aspirations accordingly? It's very crucial and it's very important. How can we make sure that even those that don't have access to internet, that we're able to go to those communities and speak to them on the ground? Last year, I visited a community in Ghana, Accra, and I sat with a group of young women that are victims of early teenage pregnancy, childhood marriage, and had formed a corporate to see how they can economically develop themselves beyond being survivors of gender-based violence. But there's more that we can do. The public sector, the private sector, the international community, really there's more that we can do to make sure that we walk the talk. Now, violence against women is also pervasive, including on digital spaces. Let's not forget that the world is evolving. Worldwide, data from the Economist Alliance Unit indicates that 38% of women with internet access have personally experienced online violence. Some have even been lured in human trafficking, which also becomes a very, it's a very urgent issue as well in Africa at the moment, ultimately resulting in gender-based violence. How ironic that the same tools that are used to transform and develop the world globally are the same tools that are utilized to cause harm to us women. How do we create the balance? It clearly needs all sectors on board and all hands on deck. Whilst I acknowledge the efforts that have been made, starting with this forum, which our mothers have created and rallied policymakers, and we could not appreciate them enough, Madame Diop coming up with this vision 3 years ago, and making sure us as young women also come along, showing a positive step taken by our African leaders towards combating gender-based violence by making it a top priority on our continent's agenda for women's rights. But it also remains a dream for us to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030 in eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls in the public and private spheres. I call upon all respective leaders to put in place legislations that protect our women and girls, and that we also teach our young men and boys to respect women at a tender age, because this also is a family dynamic. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end my statement with a quote made by the late South African President Nelson Mandela during his 1996 speech, calling for full equality and an end to sexual violence against women, which is 27 years ago, and we're still discussing the same issues. I quote, "As long as women are bound by poverty, and as long as they are looked down upon, human rights will lack substance." So let us make sure that we join hands across generations, and when we talk about the Africa that we want, it includes ending violence towards girls and women. I thank you.
Let's give them another round of applause, please. Thank you very much, Ms. Chido Mpembe and Dr. Futu, and Prof. We may leave the stage now. Thank you very much. Appreciate your contribution. I understand we still have a bit of a technical problem with the gadgets, the devices. So what we're going to do, and you'll have to bear with us, Odile will join upstage next from the next speaker. And we need a handheld mic up here, please. Audio station, can we give us a handheld mic? The technicians at the back there. Can we get a handheld microphone, please? And then Odile will come up here and be able to translate almost simultaneously for the next speaker. Are we getting a handheld mic? Okay, we're going to get the handheld mic for our next speaker. We've got two more speakers to come right now before that much needed tea break. We are running, as you know, we started a bit late. By this time, in terms of the program that you've seen, we should already be in session 2, where we are going to be having an overview of the journey of ending violence against women and girls here on our continent, plus a number of presentations. But we are where we are, so we just have to bear with us. And this serves as well as an appeal as we progress with the program after tea break, particularly, that we really become mindful of time in terms of whatever time has been allocated. And we would have different moderators or facilitators for those sessions after tea. That's not going to happen just yet. What we are going to do next is to have 2 speakers, and then we will be ready for the tea break. Odile, your microphone is coming shortly, and then we'll be able to get going. It's not fair to our French colleagues not to have a translation fully in French. Do we have the microphone? We are not going to ask the next speaker to come up until we have a handheld microphone up here for Odile to translate in French. Do we have it? Thank you. Okay, are we getting the mic? Thanks, Tamara. Okay, the microphone is coming. Now, the next speaker has played a key role in birthing this initiative through identifying the need for men in leadership to step forward as key allies in the struggle to end violence against women and girls. Now, she reached out to President Ramaphosa in 2020, and you will all know we were in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. But it was not possible to hold a conference at the time. It's therefore very fitting that we can ask her to come up as well and to address us now. And then after this address, we are going to have the keynote speaker. But first up, let me ask the co-convener of the OWLN, that's the African Women Leaders Network. That's our former Vice President, Deputy President here in the Republic of South Africa, Her Excellency Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, to come up and say a few words before our keynote address, which will be delivered by the former President of Liberia. Let's welcome Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka with a round of applause for her to speak to us. Ma'am, when you speak, just
Madame,
pause here and there so
lorsque vous
that
allez
Odile
parler,
can catch up and
veuillez
translate
utiliser ici afin
simultaneously
qu'on puisse
for the French
parler lentement, afin
audience.
qu'on
Thank you.
puisse traduire, interpréter pour l'audience francophone. Merci.
Thank you very much. And good morning.
Merci beaucoup et bonjour.
Merci et bonjour à tous.
I will rest on all the protocol that has been observed to save time.
Je vais éviter le protocole qui a déjà été respecté pour ne pas perdre du temps.
And welcome to everyone who is here in our country. It's wonderful to have all of you here.
Et je me réjouis de tous vous avoir ici dans notre pays et je vous souhaite la bienvenue à tous et à toutes.
I am a co-convener of African Women's Leaders Network.
Je suis une participante également du network des femmes africaines, des femmes dirigeantes africaines en ligne.
We have chapters in 35 African countries, and in the other countries, the chapters are still developing.
Nous avons des structures dans 35 pays d'Afrique et dans d'autres pays, des chapitres sont en train de s'installer.
And we have been accompanying our presidents in this journey. This is the third time they gather in this fashion.
Et nous accompagnons notre président tout au long de cette route et c'est la troisième occasion qui nous est offerte.
I also want to thank UN Women and the African Union, who were also part of this process of nurturing this concept.
Je voudrais également remercier UN Women, ONU Femmes, ainsi que
And African Union.
et l'Union africaine qui également ont participé et ont collaboré pour la tenue de cette troisième conférence.
It is important that what we've started, we will finish, because it is really bad governance for countries to be.
Il est très important que nous finissions ce que nous avons commencé, car c'est vraiment de la mauvaise gouvernance
For countries to have half of their population neglected,
pour que des pays aient la moitié de leur population qui soit négligée,
abused,
abusée.
which is why we decided that this is an issue of heads of state. They have to deal with this issue because they govern our countries.
C'est pour cela que nous avons décidé que ceci doit être un problème au niveau des chefs d'État, car ce sont eux nos dirigeants, nos gouvernants.
Women of Africa and women in the world have made a difference in every country.
Les femmes en Afrique et les femmes dans le monde ont fait une différence dans chaque pays.
But in every country, violence against women and girls has persisted and increased.
Mais dans chaque pays, la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles persiste.
We have also seen violence against boys.
On voit également de la violence contre les garçons.
Women and girls, women in particular, are abused by their partners, and children are abused in the most by their relatives.
Les femmes sont abusées dans la majeure partie des cas par leurs partenaires et les enfants par leurs parents ou les proches de la famille.
Women are abused at work, and girls are abused at school.
Les femmes sont abusées sur leur lieu de travail et les jeunes filles à l'école.
In conflict, women and children are the majority of those who dies more than the soldiers who are in combat.
Dans les zones de conflit, les femmes et les enfants sont ceux qui sont le plus souvent les victimes. Ce sont les victimes beaucoup plus que les soldats eux-mêmes qui font la guerre.
And many of them are violated by the enemy as well as by the people from their side.
Et beaucoup de femmes sont également violées par non seulement les soldats ennemis, mais également les soldats de leur propre pays.
Women and girls are violated in the communities they love and live in.
Les femmes sont violées dans les communautés qu'elles aiment et dans lesquelles elles vivent.
So this is a pandemic.
C'est une pandémie.
It was there before COVID, during COVID,
and after COVID.
Cette pandémie a existé et existe avant, pendant et après le Covid.
This generation, we know what it means to fight a pandemic. We saw it, and we know that we left nothing in order to survive.
Sorry.
We know how to fight a pandemic,
Cette génération, nous savons comment répondre à la pandémie
and we left nothing in order to survive.
et nous n'avons rien laissé de façon à survivre.
Even in the poorest countries, governments found money to fight the pandemic.
Même dans les pays les plus pauvres, les gouvernements ont trouvé les financements nécessaires pour combattre la pandémie.
Governments restricted our movements. We couldn't go wherever we wanted to go because they wanted us to be safe.
Nos gouvernements ont restreint nos mouvements à cause de la pandémie, car
Mais-
ils voulaient que nous soyons en sécurité.
They closed our borders in order to make sure that we don't bring infections into our countries.
Les frontières ont été fermées pour éviter que le virus ne circule de façon transfrontalière.
Health workers worked around the clock in order to make sure that we're alive.
Tous nos agents de santé ont travaillé 24 heures sur 24, inlassablement, pour s'assurer que nous étions en sécurité.
We had protocols around the world. We all knew that when you get into a country, this is what you have to do. There's nothing to discuss. You just comply. We all wore our masks.
Nous avons tous porté nos masques. Nous savons que pendant la pandémie, quel que soit l'endroit où on s'est déplacé, il y avait des protocoles sanitaires en place et tout le monde savait ce qu'il devait faire.
Violence against women is everywhere in the world. We have never seen any fight to end violence against women and girls that is anywhere close to what we did when we were fighting COVID.
La violence contre les femmes, on n'a jamais vu une
Please.
réponse. On n'a jamais vu la réponse qui a été donnée à la pandémie.
Please
On ne
clap.
l'a jamais vue pour combattre les violences faites aux filles et aux femmes.
Please clap, people.
S'il vous plaît, je vous demande d'applaudir.
We also, during COVID, knew that if we don't fight this, we will all go down because this affected all of us. Just like violence against women affects all of us, those who are violated and those who are not violated. The
Nous-
perpetrators, that is.
Nous savons que pendant la pandémie, then you lost me.
Those who are violated and the perpetrators.
Donc ceux qui sont violés et les ceux qui commettent les crimes. Je m'excuse.
As Mandela once said,
Comme l'a dit le président Mandela une fois,
if good men do not take a stand in support of women,
si les hommes de bonne volonté ne se mettent pas debout aux côtés des femmes,
that is a conspiracy against women.
c'est une conspiration contre les femmes.
So the men who are here,
Donc les hommes qui sont ici,
who are willing to fight,
qui sont prêts à se battre,
they are prepared to take a stand.
ils sont prêts à se mettre debout aux côtés des femmes.
We need you to provide leadership.
Nous avons besoin de vous, nous avons besoin de votre leadership.
The world needs a feminist men's movement.
Le monde a besoin d'un mouvement d'hommes féministes.
Men who will fight for equal pay and say, I'm not taking this paycheck because it's not equal to that of a woman who does the same work with the same qualification.
L'homme qui dit qu'il ne prendra pas un salaire plus élevé
We need,
comparé à une femme, ça doit être the man who fights et qui ne prend pas le salaire. Ça, c'est une bonne décision, d'avoir le salaire pour la même paye.
we need to end child marriage, but that is when men say, I will not marry a child, full stop. Then child marriage is over.
On doit arrêter et terminer le mariage des enfants. Mais le mariage des enfants s'arrêtera quand les hommes diront qu'ils ne se marieront pas avec des petites filles.
We need men who will say, I I will not violate a disabled woman and child.
Nous avons besoin d'hommes qui diront qu'ils ne violeront pas une femme handicapée ou un enfant.
And I must say, this needs to happen within the context of this men's movement, which must bust patriarchy.
Et ceci doit se passer dans le cadre de ce mouvement d'hommes féminins pour
Bust patriarchy, end patriarchy.
pour démanteler et finir avec la patriarcat.
And
Le patriarcat, pardon.
And men will do this because they are human beings. They know what has to happen in the world they live in.
Les hommes qui le font savent ce qui doit se passer pour que ça se termine dans le monde. Ils sont eux aussi des êtres humains.
And we will not praise them
Nous n'allons pas les glorifier
for doing this work.
en faisant ce travail.
We will encourage them though,
On va les encourager par contre.
but because men will do this because they feel strongly that this has to end.
Ces hommes le feront parce qu'ils devront sentir fortement en eux-mêmes que c'est la bonne chose à faire.
As AWLN, we are here and we want to support every president, every man who wants to take this forward.
En tant que Arline, nous supportons, nous appuyons, nous épaulons ces hommes et ces présidents qui sont prêts à suivre cette route.
Our convention is comprehensive. It covers everything and it includes some of the agreements that have already been adopted in the past few years.
La convention est complète. Elle inclut déjà certains protocoles qui ont déjà été approuvés dans les années passées.
But it lacks urgency.
Mais c'est urgent. Il y a de l'urgence.
And the language must ensure that it is implementable by every African state.
Et le langage qui doit être dans cette convention doit s'assurer que cette convention sera mise en œuvre dans tous les pays,
It is measurable.
qu'on peut la mesurer.
We must also make sure that it has short term, medium term, and long term.
Elle doit avoir des objectifs à moyen, long et intermédiaire.
We must not end this conference without identifying what is the most urgent actions that need to be taken, even things we can do outside this convention, even before the convention has been adopted, because we have until 2025 before the convention is adopted.
Donc nous devons sortir de cette conférence avec des points d'action très importants que nous devons mettre en œuvre. Mais au-delà de cela, nous avons aussi des actions que nous pouvons prendre au-delà de la conférence, parce que nous avons jusqu'à 2025 pour avoir la convention.
We will appreciate the men for doing this work, but as I say, we will not praise them because we will not praise fishes for swimming. Thank you.
Comme nous avons dit, nous ne glorifierons pas ces hommes, mais nous les apprécierons dans la mesure où on ne remercie pas un poisson s'il nage dans l'eau. Je pense que vous avez saisi l'image.
Thank you very much. Can you give another round of applause? We men are being challenged in the right way. Yeah. Don't praise fish for swimming, it's their job. They just have to do it. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Can we also give Odile a round of applause for stepping up now and helping us with the French translation while the technical problems are being sorted out. Okay, it's time now for the keynote address. And as I was explaining a bit earlier, she's played a key role in birthing this initiative. This, of course, being the third men's conference under the AU aegis of positive masculinity, identifying the need for men in leadership to step forward. She reached out to the president of South Africa, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's therefore very fitting, and I know you will give a very big round of applause to welcome her as the keynote speaker here this morning. South Africa, of course, has had the opportunity, of course, to co-host this conference with the Comoros. Let's put our hands together for Her Excellency, Dr. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Son Excellence Hélène Johnson Sirleaf.
She is a patron as well
Elle
of
est également la
Halloween.
marraine de Halloween.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, I need the mic, right?
Merci.
Yes, ma'am, you need the mic.
This
is fine. Thank you.
This is fine?
Yes.
Thank you. Please sit down. Good morning to all. I had hoped that the moderator would have continued the process of inviting us up together, and that Pomzili and I would have come up, and she would have taken those stairs with her fast movement, and everyone would have focused on her.
Je pensais
So I
que,
could have come this way just in case I faltered.
je pensais que le modérateur nous aurait invités toutes les deux, Madame Pomzile et moi-même. Comme ça, elle aurait pris les escaliers de ce côté très rapidement et moi, j'aurais pu aller plus doucement au cas où je serais tombé.
But thank you all. I'd like to
Merci.
say and to join Chiro in saying thanks
Merci à Chiro,
to the government of South Africa
merci au gouvernement d'Afrique du Sud
for hosting this meeting for us,
pour avoir organisé cette réunion pour nous,
for the courtesies that we all have received since we came here.
pour toutes les courtoisies que nous avons reçues depuis que nous sommes arrivés sur la terre sud-africaine.
I'd like to recognize the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa and to thank her for her presence.
Je voudrais reconnaître et remercier la ministre des Affaires étrangères d'Afrique du Sud.
Excellencies, distinguished participants,
Excellences, distingués participants,
please allow me to join others in standing on existing protocol.
permettez-moi d'également me joindre au protocole qui a déjà été observé.
But I would like to recognize and acknowledge the chairperson,
Je voudrais reconnaître la chairperson,
our guiding minister in whose country we are in today,
notre ministre phare dans le pays duquel nous sommes aujourd'hui,
our dear sister,
notre sœur,
Nakusana Lamini Zuma.
Nakosama Dlamini Zuma.
We are here today, and I, as patron of the African Women Leaders Network,
Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui et moi, en tant que marraine de l'Aoline,
bring to all of you
pour vous amener à tous
greetings and hopes from the 33 chapters of our steering committee.
pour vous amener les salutations et les respects des 33 chapitres des comités de Aoline.
Let me take a moment
Laissez-moi prendre un moment
to reflect on how extraordinary our process over the last 3 years have been.
Permettez-moi de prendre quelques minutes pour que nous puissions faire une réflexion sur le travail, le processus extraordinaire qui s'est tenu ces 3 dernières années.
We have witnessed African men,
Nous avons vu des
Press-
hommes africains,
presidents and leaders,
présidents et leaders,
say they know how they must lead,
qui disent qu'ils savent comment ils doivent gouverner,
how they must be held accountable.
comment est-ce qu'ils doivent être redevables.
And now we ask, in action,
Et maintenant, nous demandons en action
that they do now become a part of the solution
que maintenant, ils deviennent partie, qu'ils fassent partie de la solution
to ensure that we end the violence against women and girls.
pour s'assurer que nous terminons, que nous éradiquions la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles.
I wish to commend first His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa
Je voudrais d'abord reconnaître
Of the
le
Re-
président Cyril
of
Ramaphosa
the Republic of South Africa,
de la République d'Afrique du Sud,
one of our co-hosts,
l'un de nos cohortes,
who has responded to my call
qui a répondu à mon appel
to him on this matter
à ce sujet
in the year 2020.
en 2020.
He was followed by His Excellency
Il a été suivi par son Excellence
Felix Tshisekedi
Félix
of the
Tshisekedi
Democratic Republic of Congo,
de la République démocratique du Congo
and then His Excellency
et ensuite son Excellence
Macky Sall
Macky Sall
of Senegal.
du Sénégal.
We have been joined by their equally responsive brother leaders,
Nous avons été également rejoints par les autres frères,
included the current chair of the African Union,
y compris le président en exercice de l'Union africaine,
His Excellency Azali Assoumani
son Excellence le président
Union.
Azali Assoumani
of the Union of the Comoros,
de l'Union des Comores,
also our host.
également notre hôte.
Over the past several months,
Ces derniers mois,
many of our chapters have focused on
beaucoup de nos chapitres se
what are
sont focalisés.
the strategies and measures that have to be taken
Quelles sont les stratégies et les mesures qui doivent être prises
to be able to get action,
pour prendre action,
effective action,
action effective
on ending violence against women and girls.
pour éradiquer la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles.
We have had
Nous avons eu
robust consultations
des consultations robustes
in the past few weeks
dans ces dernières semaines
with the same objective in mind.
avec le même objectif en tête.
And as for the next day and a half,
Et dans le prochain jour et demi,
you will be listening to some of the reports that have come
vous allez écouter le rapport de certains de ces résultats, de ces recommandations qui ont
from
émané
all of these initiatives.
de toutes ces initiatives.
I cannot try to put them and summarize them for you because it is best that you will hear them.
Je ne peux pas les résumer ici pour vous.
You will be able to identify yourself in what you do with what they have said and what they have done for the promotion of women.
Car il serait mieux que vous l'entendiez de vous-même ce qu'ils ont fait pour améliorer la condition de la femme et de la fille.
So today,
Donc aujourd'hui,
I want us to agree on
je voudrais que nous soyons d'accord.
some of the issues and recommendations we wish to place
Certaines des problèmes et certaines des recommandations que nous voudrons faire ressortir de cette conférence
before our presidents.
et que nous voudrons présenter au président.
First,
Premièrement,
I use my age
j'utilise mon âge
as a privilege
comme un privilège
to plead for an expanded process and a document, a communique, which will take us much further than where we are today.
pour faire un plaidoyer pour qu'un processus expéditif et qu'un document qui nous amènera au-delà puisse être fait.
We must have the directive
Nous devons avoir les
from our
directives
men leadership
de nos hommes dirigeants
on this issue of violence against women and
sur
girls.
ce problème de la violence à l'égard des femmes et des filles.
I feel this urgency for action
Je pense qu'il y a urgence dans l'action
because this for me has been a lifetime commitment.
parce que pour moi, c'est un engagement de toute ma vie.
And there's so many others that have joined in this struggle
Et il y en a beaucoup d'autres qui se sont également jointes à
and
cette
have done
lutte
all they could to make sure that women are safe in
Et qui ont-
every country
et
in
qui
the
ont tout
world.
fait pour que les femmes soient en sécurité dans tous les pays.
Secondly,
Deuxièmement,
we need a social consensus
nous avons besoin d'un consensus social
which recognizes the power differential between women and men
qui reconnaît la différence de,
as a,
de
as a
pouvoir
driver of the action violence against women and girls.
entre les hommes et les femmes en tant que plan moteur de l'élimination de la violence contre les femmes et les jeunes filles.
It must make perpetrators
Les perpétrateurs,
of it must make perpetrators of violence against women and girls
ceux qui perpétuent les violences contre les femmes et les filles
patriarchs and use a strong measure
les
to shine
patriarches
a bright light on them,
et utiliser une mesure.
pointing them out as such perpetrators.
I am sorry,
They-
madame. Utiliser
Strong action
une action très
to
forte
point them out
pour les dénoncer
as perpetrators
comme étant ceux
of
qui
violence-
commettent
of
la
violence
violence
against women.
contre les filles et les femmes.
They must bear the consequences for their action,
Ils doivent payer les conséquences de leurs actes
and their mindsets and life experiences must be addressed in an effort to get them to change that mindset and to be able to join all of those who are working for the protection of women.
et nous devons changer leur mentalité et comprendre quelles ont été leurs expériences de façon à ce qu'ils changent leur comportement et qu'ils soient socialement plus respectueux de la femme et de la fille.
We have heard the co-convener speak to this subject
Nous avons entendu l'autre
in the
speaker
strongest of words,
dans des mots très forts
and we join her
et nous nous joignons à elle
in saying when there is a violent punishment
et nous
is
disons
necessary,
quand il y a de la violence, la punition est nécessaire
because women
parce que les femmes
have the rights
ont le droit
and women
et les femmes
are human rights.
sont des droits humains.
Third,
Troisièmement,
we have and use a number of documents,
nous avons utilisé beaucoup de documents,
both Africa-specific
spécifiquement en Afrique
and international,
et globalement, internationalement,
including the Maputo Protocol, which all of you will remember.
y compris le protocole de Maputo dont beaucoup d'entre vous se rappelleront.
This call must now be for a convention
Cet appel maintenant doit être pour une convention.
a convention issued by men,
Une convention émise par les hommes,
by our presidents,
par nos présidents,
in which specific conditions
dans lesquelles des conditions spécifiques
are inclusive
sont inclusives
for the protection of women and girls.
pour la protection des femmes et des filles.
It must be aspirational,
Elle doit être aspirationnelle,
in harmony with Africa 2063.
et en alignement avec Africa 2063.
It must be inspiring so that young boys
Elle doit inspirer les jeunes garçons
can also pick up this challenge,
pour qu'eux-mêmes puissent relever ce défi,
and men will join
et les hommes se joindront à eux
the African presidents
et joindront les présidents
who
africains
take this action.
pour prendre cette action.
It must be inspiring
Ça
for
doit être
women
une inspiration pour les femmes
who
également,
have spent much of their lives
qui ont passé la plupart de leur vie
championing the causes
à être les championnes de cette cause
for women equity,
pour l'équité des femmes,
for equal opportunity for women.
pour des opportunités équitables également pour les femmes.
It must recognize
Nous devons reconnaître,
that if we are not safe in our own countries,
si nous ne sommes pas en sécurité dans nos propres pays,
we do not then be enablers for the economic growth and development that we all seek.
par conséquent, nous ne pourrons pas être la force économique que nous recherchons pour le développement de nos pays.
The recognition
La reconnaissance
of the value of women,
de la valeur de la femme,
the contribution of women
de la contribution de la femme,
to every aspect
de tous les aspects
of our
de
lives
notre vie
is clearly stated,
est clairement stipulé,
has been established empirically
a été établi de façon
as
empirique
being a major contribution
comme étant une contribution majeure
to growth in a society.
dans la croissance d'une société.
Fourth,
Quatrièmement,
there is a saying that when we want to be changed,
il y a un dicton que quand on veut que quelque chose change,
all of us in this room today,
nous tous et toutes dans cette salle aujourd'hui,
if we want to be a part of this process
si nous voulons faire partie de ce processus
of global change,
d'un changement global,
of transformation,
de transformation,
It requires the contribution, the effort,
Cela demande la contribution et les efforts
the participation
et la participation
of each and every one of us.
de tout un chacun d'entre nous.
It is not enough to say
Il ne suffit pas de dire
that we have done our part
que nous avons fait notre part
when we participate in meetings,
quand on participe à des
or
réunions,
we've done our part when we have written our statements.
que quand nous avons écrit nos discours, nous avons fini.
Now is the time
Maintenant, c'est le moment
to change
de,
our mindsets,
de changer notre mentalité,
to be active members, active participants in this struggle.
d'être des membres actifs et des participants actifs dans cette lutte.
And the call goes to all of our brothers,
Et cet appel va également à tous nos frères,
to our sons,
à nos fils,
to our leaders,
à nos dirigeants.
that no one is safe
Personne n'est en sécurité
until everyone in a society
jusqu'à
is
ce que
safe.
tout le monde dans une société est en sécurité.
Let us commit to this
Je vous demande de vous engager,
as we approach the next day too,
comme nous approchons le deuxième jour,
to examine our strategies
pour examiner nos stratégies
and our commitments,
et nos engagements
and to have a recommitment
et se réengager à nouveau
to our efforts over the past several years.
de tous
Thank you
nos
very
efforts
much.
des dernières années. Je vous remercie.
We surely can give Her Excellency a bigger, warmer, louder round of applause. Thank you very much, Excellency Salif. It's time to transform our mindsets, especially we men, in this fight against violence against women and girls. Okay, it's time now for tea break. We are going to try and catch up with the time because we started a bit late, so we are running a little bit behind. The next session is going to be a session where we're going to get an overview of the efforts, of the progress that's being made in the fight to end, in the efforts to end violence against women and girls. And I'm going to ask all those who are going to be presenting, they know themselves, perhaps to look at opportunities where they could cut their presentations.
Donc nous allons faire une pause café, mais pour rattraper le temps, nous allons demander à ceux qui vont présenter dans les prochaines sessions de pouvoir raccourcir leur présentation.
Yeah, and let's try and respect the time that we're supposed to be back after the tea break. We should resume exactly at 12:30, in 20 minutes from now.
Dans 20 minutes, s'il vous plaît, respectons le temps de la pause café. Nous vous retrouvons ici dans 20 minutes à 12h30 précise. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup.
2-1.